I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please stand, join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Welcome to the June 26, 2024 meeting of the Traffic and Transportation Advisory Commission. Ms. Vasquez, please call the roll.
Chair Hayek,
Present.
Vice Chair Callahan,
Present.
Commissioner Emel,
Present.
Commissioner Orozco,
Present.
Commissioner Pletcher.
Here.
Thank you. We're now on to number 4, public comments. Ms. Vasquez, please make the public comments announcement.
This is the time and place for public comments. Registration for public comments is available for those wishing to address the Traffic Commission regarding items on the agenda or on a subject within the city's jurisdiction. Speakers for specific agenda items shall be called and heard during that specific item. All remarks should be addressed to the Traffic Commission as a whole. Speakers are requested to state their name and community of residence for the record. Under state law, public comment matters may not be considered by the Traffic Commission unless listed on the agenda, but may be referred to the city engineer for administrative follow-up. One individual has requested to speak on this item, and pursuant to Traffic Commission standards, public comment speakers are allowed 3 minutes. And for the record, no statements have been submitted for this item. Also, please silence all cell phones during the meeting, and please remember to mute your microphones when you are not speaking.
Thank you. May we have the first speaker, please?
Okay, so the first speaker on public item is Marie Brzezinski. Let's see. Marie, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, go ahead, Marie.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Traffic Commission. I'm here today to speak on behalf of the Lang Ranch Cross Guard. We received an email yesterday in regards to the cross guards being removed from the Lang Ranch Elementary crosswalks. So
I'm sorry. I just want to interrupt you. This is for this is not on. This part of the meeting is just for public comment for things that are not on the agenda. If you want to speak on, there would be item 6A, which are the crossing guards. We'll just move you to that public portion, and then we'll just call your name again, because if you're speaking on a specific agenda item, it has to be when that agenda item is brought up. Is that okay? Do you understand?
Oh, absolutely. But she said my name, so I thought.
Yeah. Okay, no problem. We'll move it to 6A.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, so there are no more speakers, right?
No.
Okay. Number 5, summary notes from our April 24, 2024 meeting. Are there any comments on the summary notes from the commission? Okay, no comments. Let's move on to item number 6. Before we hear the engineer's report on item 6A, I want to clarify the Traffic Commission's role for this item. The city's 2023 crossing guard policy is based on objective standards directly related to pedestrian and vehicle counts. Per the policy, this report before us tonight is an annual information item only and is being provided to the Traffic and Transportation Advisory Committee to provide transparency and facilitate public input. As such, no vote or recommendation by this commission is required or will be taken tonight. With that being said, may we please request the Deputy Public Works Director, Nader Hidari, to present our first engineer's report, which is an information item.
Thank you, Chair Hayek.
And good evening to the commissioners and to the public. Before we get started, I just want to reiterate there, from some of the public comments we've received, there may be a little bit of confusion, but just to reiterate, tonight's presentation is going to be a presentation on the data that's been collected throughout the spring 2024 counts, the annual counts that are performed, and there are no changes being made to the program this year. And so that's just a quick clarification, but I'll get into all the details here shortly. My name is Nader Haidari. I'm the city engineer and the deputy public works director, overseeing some of the transportation functions, including the crossing guard program. And alongside me tonight is Jim Mashiko, our senior transportation and traffic engineer, along with other city staff. The item before you is our annual report of information on pedestrian vehicle counts at all staffed crossings throughout the community. The City Council first approved the crossing guard, the first crossing guard in 1964, shortly after the city's incorporation, and has been managing and funding the program ever since. The program is adaptable. Locations are added or removed based on the actual needs of the community and changes in transportation patterns. The state has established minimum crossing guard standards that should be met for considering crossing guard placement. And per the requirements of the state and commonly used minimum standards, qualifying for those minimum standards does not guarantee the placement of a crossing guard, but it rather qualifies them for consideration. Since 1999, a set of city standards that have been modeled after the state standards have been used to determine where to place crossing guards. The city standards since 1999 have been more lenient than the state standards. And they have guided the program so far. Just a little bit more background. There are currently 24 crossing guard locations citywide at 20 campuses. 15 of those campuses are elementary and 5 are middle, and Sycamore is a combined K-8 complex. 18 of the 24 are directly adjacent to the school, basically, touching the school, while the 6 of the locations are down the street from the school. The crossing guard program currently has one program manager, a lead guard, a senior crossing guard, and over 30 crossing guards when fully staffed. Most schools have one crossing location, but there are a few schools that have more than one location or share a location in certain cases. The City Council directed staff to work with the Traffic Commission in late 2022 to update the city's crossing guard program policies and standards. Based on the Traffic Commission's detailed input and feedback, as well as considerable feedback from the public throughout the entire process, this comprehensive process concluded with last year with the City Council's approval of the new 2023 City Crossing Guard policy in February 2023. This policy took effect this past school year, and it has clear and objective standards for the crossing guard placement. Those standards are far more generous than the statewide standards that are used by almost every other public agency, and that's primarily through relaxed or reduced thresholds that in many cases are just half of what the state standards normally require in order to qualify for a crossing guard. The process for conducting the annual counts is listed on this slide. It starts with the annual counts of all school-age pedestrians and vehicles at all of the existing locations. Those are performed by a professional engineering firm every spring. The results of the count are compared against the city's policy standards by the Public Works Director to determine if the locations meet the minimum standards to qualify for a crossing guard. Staff then brings the report as an information item to the Transportation Commission as a venue to share the information and collect public input, which is where we are tonight. The city is the only municipal agency in Ventura County that has their own more generous local standard instead of relying on the state standards for crossing guard placements. And the benefit of objective standards is that in traffic control devices is to ensure the resources can be deployed appropriately and put where the data indicates they need to be, and that decisions are made without bias. In addition, Thousand Oaks has by far the largest number of crosswalk locations that are staffed with crossing guards throughout the county, even though we're not the largest or even the second largest city in the county, with Oxnard and Simi Valley being larger than Thousand Oaks in population. The other comparable city in size to Thousand Oaks is Ventura, and you can see on the slide that the city of Ventura only has 5 crossing guard locations that meet the state standards that the city provides, while the Ventura Unified School District funds and manages the additional locations that are placed that don't meet the state standards. I also want to highlight the significant efforts and investments that the city has made and continues to make towards walkability and pedestrian safety improvements. It's been a big push for the city. Since 2010 alone, the city has spent over $20 million to make our streets safer for all modes of transportation under a focused effort to improve streets, sidewalks, and bike lanes and make them more accessible and easy to use, including near school areas. Some examples include Herbs Road, Willow Lane, Moore Park Road, Caneo School Road, Westlake Boulevard, and others. We're also enhancing pedestrian crossings. The city now has 36 enhanced pedestrian crossings citywide, with 10 of them just having been built over the last 6 months. Sidewalks have also been added to several roadways, including Jans Road, Los Feliz, Rancho Road, and Potrero, and others, to improve walkability to schools. And several hundred ADA ramps at the intersections of the corners have also been upgraded since 2010 to meet ADA standards. We're also making major investments in bicycle facilities citywide, most recently along Willow Lane, Lynn Road, Arbalez, Reno Road, Wendy Drive, and Rancho Road, and that is to improve safety and accessibility for bicyclists, including those who are biking to school. We continue to plan for the future with comprehensive transportation engineering studies every 5 years to plan where we're going to make our future investments. This year and in 2023, in addition to building and improving physical infrastructure, the city put extensive effort into creating education and awareness about walking to school, as well as the Crossing Guard program and crosswalk counts. The comprehensive walktoschoolto.org website was launched and frequently updated with customizable materials that people can use to organize walking efforts, both digitally and in print. The website also supports the various in-person outreach presentations and materials that are distributed to the school district and others to give people the tools that are needed to increase walking and biking to schools. The efforts had a very extensive digital reach with over 20,000 impressions on social media and the website over 2023 and 2024. Details of that and a more granular summary of all that data is included in your packet and under attachment number 4. So here's a quick recap of the 2023 Crossing Guard policy and how it is to be administered in terms of qualifying locations for future approved crossing guard placement. As mentioned earlier, the policy contains objective criteria that is used to determine whether or not the locations are eligible for placement of crossing guards. The new policy also includes a 2 consecutive year review process, which means that a location is not eliminated from the program based solely on 1 year's counts. And it only is so if it has fallen short of the required counts 2 consecutive years in a row. The new policy has a minimum amount of school-age pedestrians and vehicle movements that are conflicting with those movement of pedestrians through the crosswalk for each of the 3 different types of intersection types. So uncontrolled intersection has, those that don't have a stop sign or a traffic signal. Then of course there's the stop sign controlled intersections, and then the fully signalized intersection. Those are the primary 3 types of intersections in town. In order to qualify for a crossing guard, a location must meet both the pedestrian and the vehicle minimums in the AM and the PM hours. And any pedestrian count of less than 10 for either the AM or PM automatically disqualifies a location. As mentioned earlier, most of these values are less than the state standards, which makes them far easier to qualify for. For instance, the state requires 40 pedestrians at an uncontrolled or stop-controlled intersection, and the city only requires 20, which is half of that number. The annual pedestrian and vehicle counts are done in coordination with published school bell schedules in an effort to maximize pedestrian and vehicle numbers. They're done for 1 full hour in the morning, 1 full hour in the afternoon, and typically done Tuesdays through Thursdays, avoiding Mondays and Fridays, during regular bill schedules, and obviously avoiding rain days and scheduled major holidays in order to create a representative sample size. The new policy adopted by the City Council last year also, just as a reminder, includes 4 additional criteria that can be considered in order to qualify a location. Each of these alternatives was designed and inserted into the policy to lower the minimum thresholds if these certain criteria were met. This year, 4 additional locations were qualified as a result of the alternative criteria, all 4 of which were under alternative number 1. So we will now just get into that so we can get more detail there. So on to the summary of the results from the 2024 counts. This is the overall list of the 24 locations that were evaluated this year, along with 2 additional locations that were requested to be evaluated, which are listed at the bottom. All the locations that are listed in red do not meet the city's reduced and more generous minimum requirements that are needed to qualify for a crossing guard, which includes both of the 2 newly studied locations. We will detail things further in the following 2 slides. So here's just the breakdown of the 14 locations that did not meet the minimum criteria or qualify under any of the 4 applicable alternatives. These results are very similar to past counts, including 2023, when 13 of the 24 locations did not meet the minimum criteria. 5 of these 14 locations did not qualify due to extremely low pedestrian counts with single-digit pedestrians counts, and the remaining 9 of the 14 did not either meet the minimum criteria for a number of vehicles or pedestrians, or both. And this is the 10 locations that do have the sufficient number of pedestrian and vehicle counts in order to meet the requirements for crossing guard placement. It should be noted that only 4 of the 10 locations would be approved if the city was using the state standard, which most cities throughout the rest of the county and throughout the rest of the state utilize. This means that 6 additional locations were qualified directly as a result of the city's 2023 crossing guard policy, which has easier to meet standards, which demonstrates that the city's policy is being effective in helping qualify more locations. Of these 6 additional locations that were qualified under our local standards, 2 were directly qualified as a result of the reduced thresholds that are required, and 4, as I mentioned earlier, were qualified as a result of alternative number 1. In those cases, although the intersections didn't have the minimum number of pedestrians for one of the counts, either the AM or the PM, they were able to qualify because all of the other 3 counts met the much higher to achieve state minimums, which is what alternative 1 qualifies. So just a couple of closing notes, and to summarize, as I mentioned, there was a quite extensive outreach and advocacy for the program over the past 18 months. And despite those efforts, the results from this year's counts are very similar to recent years and very similar to 2023, which also had approximately the same number of locations that did not meet the minimum standards. It is good to see that the 2023 policy has been effective in qualifying additional locations. As I mentioned just previously, that 6 additional locations qualified as a result of that city standard, which is basically more than doubling the number of locations that do meet the standards that would have otherwise. As I mentioned at the outset, there are no changes to any locations taking place at this upcoming school year, since this is year 1 of the policy and there's a 2 consecutive year requirement. And to further detail, that intersection would have to fall short of the counts for 2 consecutive years before the crossing guard service would be eliminated. So that means the earliest a crossing guard location at any campus could be eliminated would be the 2025 to 2026 school year, which will be based on the evaluation of next year's counts in addition to comparing them against this year's counts. In the meantime, staff will keep promoting walking to school via our robust public outreach campaign on social media and our comprehensive walktoschoolto.org website that contains all of the walk and bike safety tips and grassroots tools to help residents mobilize their neighborhoods. We're also going to continue to explore opportunities to build more enhanced pedestrian crossings, more sidewalks, and more bike lanes citywide. And in closing, I just want to remind everybody that the Crossing Guard program, since its outset, is an adaptable program, and that locations in the future will continue to be added or removed based on the actual field counts, and in order to match the needs of the community and changes in transportation patterns The city's crossing guard policy is the most generous and accommodating of any city in the county. The recommendations are listed in the staff report. The Traffic Commission recommendation on this item, given that it is an informational item and not an action item, is to receive this report, which you have just done, and take and hear public comments for the record. And I thank you, and staff is happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Before we get into it, and so the public that's here is aware, as this commission doesn't have any authority to change city council ordinances or processes or procedures, this is a venue so we can collect some public feedback and input regarding this report. So just so everyone is clear, what happens with this input and feedback after tonight that is collected by the public and the commission?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, obviously this is the main public venue to receive the input and feedback, as you mentioned, and that goes into the record. The record of this meeting is kept, and we're going to be, taking all the information and hearing all the input and documenting that so it can be part of the record. And
Okay, but
Yeah.
so does this go to city council? Just the feedback, input, the notes, the meeting notes?
the meeting notes do go to the city council, correct?
Okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you. Commission have any questions for staff?
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Haydari, thank you for the report. Just to follow up on Chair's question about what this information is going to be used for, and whether it goes to the city council. Is this item going to be agendized for the city council anytime soon?
This item will the meeting information and the meeting notes and the whole report from the counts from last year is disseminated to the city council, but there is no city council action item or agenda item that takes place. So in accordance with the policy, the counts are performed, the Public Works Director verifies the counts, and then the counts are presented at this venue, at the Transportation and Traffic Commission venue, since this is the venue with a focus on transportation and traffic. There is no subsequent action by the city council.
So is it true that the only time that this item would be agendized for the city council is when there has been a decision to either remove or install a crossing guard at a given location?
No, it will not. The only period in time which a crossing guard item would go to city council is if in a decision or an action, not a decision, but if the results that were presented and the information presented tonight was appealed to the city council for some reason. But otherwise, as if the department is using the policy and administering the policy that the city council has put forth, there is no secondary need for the city council to reapprove what's already in their policy.
Okay, so just so the public is aware, if and when there is a time that the Public Works Director does make a decision to remove a crossing guard, the Public Works Director will make that decision. That will come as an information item to this commission.
Correct.
And there is I believe, a 60-day appeal period for the public to appeal the Public Work Director's decision to the City Council, right?
Yeah, the appeal period, I believe, is a little bit shorter. I think it's 14 days.
14 days?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that appeal period does exist?
Yes.
Okay. That's all. Thank you, Chair.
Sure.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, staff, for the report and all of the information. One question I do have is, in the event, when we're looking down the line at 2025, 2026, and we are looking at possibly evaluating, or if we receive enough public comment for a crossing guard location to be considered, what's the process of that? What does that look like?
So you're alluding to similar with this year, we had 2 additional locations that were evaluated?
Correct. Or if we have, if we follow through, if a crossing guard location does end up failing our metrics again, and is set to be terminated, what's the process, aside from the appeal process, what does the process look like to reinstate that crossing guard location?
Yeah, it's a fairly straightforward process. I mean, it's just simply a request, and it's not formalized. It doesn't have to come only from one particular individual or the principal or the school district. It can come from anybody that requests that we study a crossing guard location, and we generally then we just include that in our following year. We do these counts once a year, so sometimes, and in this case, the two that we studied this year, the request came in, in the fall, and we advised that person we will include that when we do the counts. We're not going to do the counts in the next few weeks. It's going to be in a few months, and we incorporated those. So those would be, upon request, it would be added to the program.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I want to just get into a better understanding of what M6 Consulting did and kind of how they went about performing these counts. And, I think also at the same time reference Appendix 1 of Attachment 3, which is our basically our central table. Part of the resolution that was passed by City Council is this idea that, the City Council has put forth in the resolution they're going to work with the school district, hand in hand to promote this program. Can you help me better understand, does city staff or does M6 Consulting reach out to the school district to get an idea of what, for instance, I guess even when they would be coming to a particular location or what that bell schedule looks like? Can you just help me understand what that back and forth is?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, each school has a different bell schedule, and they vary, and some have certain early days and late days, and so it's morphed a little bit. I think in the past it was kind of every campus had almost identical everything, but things are unique now. So we have those established bell schedules, and then we also, about a month before we start, we reach out again to see if there's any unusual dates or field trips or something that we should be avoiding. And so we make every effort to do that to ensure that we're counting at the right time we're supposed to be counting. We did recount one particular location this year at Redwood because the date we got there was a field trip or some special activity that had not been published or we hadn't been made aware of, so we made sure to recount that one the following week. But otherwise, it's relatively straightforward. We have those times, and we're able to count for the highest hour.
So with particular school sites, like I know middle schools begin this idea of this zero period where kids are coming in technically before school starts to, do choir, do other various activities on campus, and even some of the middle schools leave early. And I think even some of the elementaries kind of have some changing schedules like you mentioned. Is there any consideration on that zero period or 0 hour into analyzing? Because just referring to Appendix 1 of Attachment 3, we list like regular and early, and I'm assuming that's just a regular bell schedule and an early bell schedule on those kind of off earlier days. But I think is there any consideration on that zero period?
Well, the middle schools are the primary one that have the zero period, and the middle schools all have, from my understanding, they've all, Kalina, Los Cerritos, Redwood, Sequoia, they've all qualified there. There's lots of pedestrian activity at each of those, so that hasn't really come into the picture. But the majority of the students aren't in the zero period, so that's the normal time that we're counting is the highest, the peak hour. If we were to start earlier, that 1 hour window then would move down earlier and potentially reduce the counts, unless a majority of the students were taking zero period.
Well, and maybe that's where my question actually lies, is this idea that we're only counting for 1 hour, kind of the peak hour that you mentioned. To me, I guess I don't quite understand that. I understand from like a traffic count standpoint, when we talk about vehicles, we talk about peak hours. But when you're looking at pedestrians and kids and getting to school on time, to me, the counts should be for a realistic period. If you put like a like with Weathersfield, for instance, if you put 7:45 to 8:45, and well, that's a bad example, but just a school with a little bit longer period of time that maybe kids are coming in, I think that really that full aspect should be counted and not just kind of this peak period, because it's reflective of the actual school site versus necessarily like trying to find that baseline of, well, at each school site we counted, 1 hour, right? So I guess it's more of just a consideration maybe for the future of saying, if school sites have a zero period, if school sites are getting out early, if school sites are doing anything where kids are showing up to campus earlier, perhaps we look at kind of changing that baseline and not necessarily being concerned with, well, we're only counting 1 hour per school site. We're getting a real true reflective count of students arriving on campus. Because traffic's traffic and the cars are the cars. And our concern is getting these kids across an intersection or getting these kids to school safely. So to me, that kind of methodology that maybe M6 Consulting is utilizing there for this 1 hour baseline maybe should be altered slightly just to reflect that individual school site. Because I think you'd get different results. I think these numbers would look slightly different based on just changing that kind of methodology.
Are you referring to expanding the window?
If it's appropriate for that particular school site, or maybe just looking at expanding the window overall beyond just like a peak hour, just because, we've talked in previous years of communication issues between the school district and the city and getting a real accurate bell count, and I've been happy to help facilitate in whatever capacity. But perhaps, to really identify individual school sites, we need to look at individual school sites and how those sites are ran, especially because, you admitted in the last, in your presentation that, or you just, in the earlier part of my question was school sites have changed schedules, and they kind of, some school sites get out early, Earst gets out early, but, Weathersfield doesn't look like it has an early release. So I guess it's more half question, but half point.
Yeah, and I think primarily, I believe the 1 hour window is being used is because it's being tiered off of the way the counts are dictated to be run per the California MUTCD, using the 1 hour window. How they came up with that or why they use that, but I guess that's the counting criteria.
Well,
Yeah.
And right, I understand. It's an engineering focus, and engineers and the way that you focus on traffic and vehicles, right, is going to be very scientific and have a methodology behind that. I just think the program needs to look at a different methodology to really reflect the actual school sites and how they're ran, because the individual school sites may have a different schedule than what is put into the, what is the actual methodology. So I wanted to ask, just in terms of getting a better idea of how M6 Consulting does their counts. I just, again, kind of seeing it off into the future, or is maybe M6 Consulting doing it now, is when they're at a school site doing individual counts, are they taking kind of getting a general understanding, are people coming from a different way? Or are students coming from a different, intersection? Or are we looking around at the entire school site and seeing if maybe kids are coming, a different way to school, where moving a crossing guard to a different location or something? I just want to get a better understanding. Are we looking at all potential locations for a crossing guard versus where they're currently stationed while we're there doing counts?
Yeah, they are. So they're counting everybody. So even the student that gets dropped off by their parent and didn't really walk to school, but he's at the intersection and uses the crosswalk crossing, they are counted. The bicycles are counted and so forth. So that's reflective of the actual usage of that actual crossing. They are not, and so they're just counting the existing. They're not being out there to, re-engineer or evaluate or look at other locations. Those are generally communicated to us pretty frequently. That's why the program has, for instance, 6 locations that are off the campus down the street because there was a high pedestrian activity and it was noticed and notified and we counted and it was warranted. But and as I mentioned, we also are open to counting any other additional locations annually. So the counts by M6 are more focused on, and they have to be because of the volume of students, and in fact 2 people are at the intersection. So there really isn't time for them to look beyond and try to study other options. Generally, each of these locations is the busiest crossing, and in fact, almost all of them have the Safe Routes to School orange crosswalk striping on them. It's a designated crosswalk, for lack of better words. So,
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then I guess just in with this new resolution that we recently passed, I mean, in previous years, city council has had obviously some subjectivity to pick a certain school site to maintain based on public comment or feedback, or just to confirm, is there any subjectivity built into this resolution, or are we really looking at it on a purely objective basis with our set out alternatives that we discussed last year?
yeah, it is the latter. Just a clear and objective policy with easy to follow standards that everybody, the counting firm, the commissioners, the public can all follow what the requirements are. That was one of the goals of the new policy, is to make it a clear and objective policy.
Right. Okay. Thank you. No more questions, Mr. Chair.
Sure, good.
Great, thank you. I have one more additional question just about the amount of outreach that was done to the schools. I did notice that we had a handful of schools that had failed the metrics test in 2023, but had passed in 2024. And I was just curious if we had any insight into what was most effective in that communication outreach, so that we could, replicate that or expand on that.
Yeah, so, in 2023, 13 schools did not qualify under the counts, and 3 of those 13 improved and therefore are now on the qualifying list. Unfortunately, 4 additional ones that were qualified in 23 went in the other direction. That's how we wound up with 14. But those 3 schools, I believe they were quite close. And that's the benefit of doing this 2-year smoothing or this 2 consecutive year analysis. So one anomaly isn't going to, change the tide that quickly. So I think they were quite close, or they were, if you need 20 pedestrians, they were like at 17 or 18, and then the following year they were over 20. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. Our communications director, Alexander South, is here, but I don't think there was any specific element that was driven to any one specific school. It was just, our overall broad outreach that included over 20,000 hits that and all the communication, and not only that we're doing, but the school district's doing, that has helped. And we're optimistic and hopeful that momentum will continue and more schools will follow suit.
Great, thank you so much.
Okay, just so the public is aware, I know you mentioned California MUTC. The MUTC is the Manual of Uniform Traffic Controls, which basically says every stop sign looks the same color, crosswalks are striped the same, and that's where the crossing guard standards are, right? I just wanted everyone clear on that. I know we're going to talk quite a bit about the locations that haven't met the criteria in this first year count, but there are 6 that you mentioned that are new that have met the criteria. Does the city council's ordinance work both ways? Do they have to meet the criteria in order to be added, or because they meet the criteria now, they'll be added for 24, 25?
Well, no, these were all the existing ones. So we only looked at 2 additional ones. Neither one qualified, but the 10 that do qualify, 6 of them met the standards or qualified directly due to the city's policy being more lenient than the state's. Only the blue ones here are the only ones that meet the normal standards that most cities use or meet the state standards. But 6 additional ones, which are amongst the existing locations we have, also qualified because of the relaxed standards.
I got it. I must have.
So there are no new, the only 2, the 2 new locations we studied, both of them did not have the requisite counts.
Got it. So will they be counted again next year?
The 2 additional ones we studied, no, they will not
No,
be. If
okay.
they were requested, we would.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else?
Thank you, Chair. So the way that our current policy is written, for a crossing guard to be removed, that location needs to fail the metric test 2 years in a row.
Correct.
So theoretically, it is possible to have a given location meet the counts, fail the counts, meet the counts, fail, and just flip-flop every other year. That's possible, right?
Correct. And they would remain.
The crossing guard
Staffed.
would remain.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I think that's an important point because I did read some material where there was concern expressed that next year these crossing guards are going to be gone, and that's not true, right?
That is not true. Yep, you are correct. And that's kind of my brief preface at the beginning of the meeting, and to indicate that there are no changes being made to the upcoming school year. We'll continue with the 24 locations, and all are staffed. Our program has staffed up now. We've had a much better success rate than we did right after COVID in terms of, having the staff in place, being able to hire, and being able to deploy them at all the locations. We've had a pretty strong staffing rate over the last 6 to 9 months.
So if I look at Appendix 1 to Attachment 3, it looks like I regret that I didn't bring my bifocals because this print is really small, but it's acacia redwood, right? Yeah. Oh, that. There. Much better. Okay. Okay. So acacia redwood. I mean, they met the vehicle counts in the AM and the PM. They met the pedestrian counts in the PM. They missed the AM count by 1 pedestrian. Is that right? Because they were automatically disqualified because they were in the 9 and the 9 walkers in the AM automatically disqualified them.
Correct. Yeah, that was one of the, the state standard is 40, and then the city dropped the minimum to 20. But at the same time, there was kind of a floor put on it that if it's single digit, you're not even 1/4 of the state standard, so then it's eliminated. That was the same circumstance for Acacia Redwood last year.
So
with 9.
So, but under the alternate number 1, the 75% criteria,
Yeah.
if they had only had 1 more walker, they would have met the 75%. They would not have been automatically disqualified. And that guard would not be slated for removal, right? Because they would have
It
met
may
the-
not be, because the 75% alternative indicates that all of your other counts meet the state requirements,
Oh, okay.
which
so,
is 40. So that it wasn't a matter of just 1 pedestrian needed there.
and those state requirements were elevated. So the vehicle counts would have been higher and the pedestrian counts would have been
Yeah,
back
it's
up to
primarily the
40.
pedestrian for them. So they needed 11 more pedestrians in the morning to get to the 20. Only having 10 would have qualified them for consideration under alternative number 1, but they only have
I see.
24 pedestrians, not the 40 of the state standard. So they would not have been qualified under alternative number 1.
I see. But the point being, some of these schools here on the list,
Yeah, are not
That
far
are-
off. Yeah.
they're not far off, right? And
Yeah.
and so I think that what the public should understand, and the takeaway from this meeting tonight and the information that we've got before us now, is that there is another school year left to get the pedestrian count. I think the vehicle counts are going to be what they're going to be, but the one component, the one factor that people can control is whether your child walks to school or not. And that is a number that can change next spring, and it can change the whole picture that we're looking at with this Appendix 1 to Attachment 3. So that's That's the comment that I have for now, and I'll turn it back over to you, Chair.
Okay. No other questions from the commission to city staff. I'd like to open up the opportunity for the public to speak on the item before the commission begins its discussions. Do we have speakers on this item?
Yes, so we have 7 individuals that have requested to speak on this item. 3 are in-house, 4 online. Speakers are allowed 3 minutes, and for the record, we've received over 50 written statements that have been submitted on this item. All written statements have been given to the Traffic Commission and are available here in the boardroom tonight for the public to review and on the city's agenda portal online.
Thank you. So we'll do the 3 speakers that are here first. Rachel White. She took off, okay. If she comes back. Next speaker is Kinsey Flame. Okay. And Samantha Muscarella? All right, we'll be 1 for 3. You could come to the microphone right up here.
Samantha, just to let you know, you'll be reminded when you have 1 minute remaining and again when your time to speak is up.
Okay. Good to go. Okay. The reason I signed up to speak tonight is because I feel a personal need and an obligation to let you know how dangerous I think it would be at the intersection of Camino Calandria and Darlington Drive if we didn't have a crossing guard. I say an obligation because I'm lucky enough to work at Weathersfield. It's a really, really wonderful elementary school. I've even worked the drop-off gate on Camino Calandria, so I've physically seen the traffic from 8 a.m. to 8:23 when the first bell rings. It's an extremely crowded, small intersection coming down from a very steep hill. I found out today the grade on Calandria is between 3 and 10%. We come down a very, very steep hill. And it is a neighborhood school. So while we consider ourselves a hidden gem, people know how amazing we are because we keep growing. And our growth isn't from people outside our neighborhood like Mates or Earths or the other charter schools that are approved. Our families are coming from within the neighborhood. And I can say that our ability to create the loving and safe environment that kids thrive in starts with the ability to safely get to school. I think this decision is not a great one, and our numbers are over for walkers. You keep talking about how walk to school. We did a walk to school program with council members. We're well above walkers, and we're very close on cars, but I just think the grade should be taken into consideration, and I think you should see it. It's one. M6 might have known we didn't have a field trip, but we don't know they were coming, and I'm staff. So we don't know they're out there. We see them out there, and we try to cross the intersection, but I think there's room for subjectivity in some areas. And
You have 1 minute.
okay, and that's it. I hope we can get some reconsideration. I hope our numbers are better, but I will show up for the kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the speaker? Samantha.
I just wanted to clarify your name. Samantha?
Yes.
Okay. Hi.
Hi.
Okay.
Oh,
Thank you. All right, so we'll move on to the Zoom speakers. Thank you.
Okay, our first speaker online will be Marie Berdzinski. Marie, please click unmute and state your name and city of residence for the record. You will be reminded when you have 1 minute remaining and again when your time to speak is up. Marie, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay, go ahead.
Good evening again, Traffic Commission. Thank you so much for your time. My name is Marie Berdzinski. I'm a resident of Thousand Oaks. I live in the Summit neighborhood near Lang Ranch. So that is the school I'm speaking on behalf. Many times the cross guard topic does come up in our school site meetings. that we have at school. And we do understand that for this next coming up school year, we will have our cross guards. However, we know that our school is in red for the 2025. So that is what our focus is for right now. Our two crosswalks, I'm not sure if maybe maybe some of you know which one's this one. It's the Whitechapel and Knightbridge, and also Whitechapel and Sandhurst. The Whitechapel and Sandhurst, that particular one, also similar to the previous speaker, has a steeper grade. So the cars do go quite fast down there, and there's only the one stop sign. So there's only certain cars stop. So sometimes there's confusion in that area. And many times the cross guard has to really like kind of maybe raise his hands or shake them even more to try to get cars' attentions to stop and whatnot. It's that area could be really scary due to maybe, I mean, I don't understand the city rules for stop signs, but there isn't a stop sign driving up and down Whitechapel. On the other side for the Whitechapel and the Sandhurst, that one is a four-way stop. However, a lot of cars, when they're exiting the school, they turn left when they're not supposed to turn left. So then when the pedestrians are crossing, that can also be
You have 1 minute.
somewhat, that can be dangerous. So there are some issues we have. So we would like to make a request if someone can come out in the beginning of the school year to meet to discuss these. Also, if we could maybe make advice to have a safer action plan of what we can do. I know there's programs online, but if there's something more tangible we could do in addition to Walk to School Day, that would be great to get the information to use the cross centers. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marie.
Any questions for the speaker? Okay, we'll have our next speaker.
Okay, our next speaker is Kinsey Flame. Kinsey, please click unmute and state your name and city of residence for the record. You will be reminded when you have 1 minute remaining, and again when your time to speak is up. Kinsey, can you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Perfect. Good evening, Traffic Commission community members and friends. My name is Kinsey Flame, and my husband and I have 2 children enrolled in CVUSD schools. As we engage with our community and visit various school sites through our community involvement and careers, we have come to appreciate the crucial role that crossing guards play in ensuring the safety of our children. It is evident that some schools meet the state minimum requirements for crossing guards only during certain times of the day, leaving gaps in safety for families who rely on this service. I firmly believe that the city has the responsibility to ensure that all children can walk safely to and from school. The value of a child's life cannot be measured in monetary terms, but it is essential that the city's investment in crossing guard reflects the importance of this service. I urge the Traffic Commission to prioritize safety over budget constraints and maintain all current crossing guard positions. While initiatives to make our city more walkable are commendable, the presence of a crossing guard during drop-off and pickup times remains irreplaceable. I must emphasize that having actual crossing guards during drop-off and pickups is irreplaceable. Recently, I personally experienced a concerning incident where a car drove through a clearly marked crosswalk with lights, with a crossing guard present, and still went through it. It is crucial to consider the unpredictable nature of school schedules, such as late starts, minimum days, and field trips, which can impact the use of crossing guards. It would be challenging to accurately assess the need for crossing guards at any given time due to these fluctuations. I urge you to prioritize the safety of our children and recognize the immeasurable value of each child's life. I strongly recommend maintaining our crossing guards to ensure that our city remains a walkable and safe for children traveling to and from school. And I leave you with a question, maybe a task. Please visit our school sites if you don't do a pickup and drop off and view the chaos. And again, I leave you with, how much is one child's life worth per year?
Thank you. Any questions for the speaker? No? We'll go on to the next speaker.
Okay, the next speaker is Nadia. Nadia, please click unmute and state your name and city of residence for the record. You will be reminded when you have 1 minute remaining, and again when your time to speak is up. Nadia, can you hear me? Nadia? Nadia, you can click unmute. Okay, we'll go ahead and go to the next speaker. The next one will be Brittany Wood. Brittany, please click unmute and state your name and city of residence for the record. You will be reminded when you have 1 minute remaining, and again when your time to speak is up. Let's see. Okay, Brittany just left the chat. She's no longer available, so I'm going to go ahead and try Nadia again. Nadia, can you hear me? Nadia? Nadia, you should see on your screen, it will allow you to unmute.
I think I got it.
Yes, we can hear you, Nadia. Okay,
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
I'm sorry about that.
It's okay.
So my name is Nadia Tartaglia. I am a resident of Thousand Oaks. I will be having a child go to Wildwood Elementary in this upcoming year. We do live very close to the school. I do want to say I do appreciate the crosswalk enhancements that have been done in our neighborhood. However, it does not make somebody a better driver and does not always give the pedestrian the right of way. I still see people just zoom through crosswalks when somebody is waiting. My big concern is if a crossing guard is removed from this area, you're relying on a child to determine the distance a car is and also the speed they're coming before they make a decision to cross a crosswalk on their own, and that is a very scary thought. And kids don't always pay attention. A crossing guard is there to protect the children, to get them across the street. And crossing Arbalez from Wildwood to the Parkside is still dangerous. I was leaving a meeting from the school, not obviously during hours that probably would have had a crossing guard, but somebody still slowed down. And I still walked through and they decided to speed up behind me. So I'm really concerned that that would happen to children and people don't always pay attention. I also, with hearing all the data and the numbers not being met, my thought was also, I don't know if any of the schools' population is weighted, if this is a weighted average, because schools are different sizes. So schools that do have a larger population might hit these numbers, whereas a smaller school may not. So that is more of a question if this hitting number 20 or whatever that number is across the board, because it could be harder
You
for
have
a
1
smaller
minute.
school to hit those numbers. So in all, I would eventually want my child to walk to school, or I'd want to walk her to school. But if a crossing guard is not present, it is not something I will probably consider because I don't trust the drivers, unfortunately. They're in a rush and they don't care for any pedestrians. That is all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers?
Yes, we have Brittany back, so I'm going to
Okay.
try to get her. Brittany, you're going to go ahead and click unmute, state your name and city of residence for the record. You'll be reminded when you have 1 minute remaining, and again when your time to speak is up. She dropped off again. Yeah, she's not on there. She signed off again.
Okay. Does staff have any response or comments regarding any of the public speakers?
Yeah, I can offer a couple comments. One of the speakers was mentioning that the school was unaware when the date that the counts were being made, and I think that's inherent in trying to obtain representative counts, unbiased and kind of a representative school day. So yeah, we're not publishing the schedule of when each school is being counted. So that's kind of part of the obtaining the representative data process. Another speaker was indicating a desire to just look at intersections or stop signs adjacent to the campus. I believe that was Lang Ranch, and we will attempt to reach out to that speaker and meet up with them when the school year starts so we can evaluate those locations. I do want to clarify that the crossing guards do not control traffic, nor do they change driver behavior. They help the students find gaps in traffic, and they're certainly not trained or advised or recommended to jump out into the roadway and stop the vehicles and allow the students to pass. So that occasionally the interpretation is different, and I just wanted to make that clear. They're not police officers. They're not out there controlling traffic. They're helping find gaps and then cross people safely at that point in time. And then the last speaker, I was asking if the minimum thresholds are variable based on school size, and while they are not, they are much lower than the state standard requirements. So, and that addresses that issue in terms of bringing down the floor and making it much easier to qualify. You only need 20 pedestrians to cross, and I think most every school has in the hundreds of students. So. I think those are the remarks. Anybody else have anything to add? Okay.
Thank you. Commissioners, any further questions for staff? Commissioner Mill?
Thank you, Chair. So one thing I wanted to shore up was the counts that were made by M6 at a given location. Those were only done on one day. Is that right?
That is correct.
So the consultants visited each location only once.
That is correct. That's per the MUTCD and per the city policy.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. So at this point, we'll close this item to public comments and open discussion among the commission. I want to clarify again that this report was an information item presenting the 2024 pedestrian and vehicle counts in relation to the approved City Council crossing guard policy, and to hear public input, which we have done. As such, no additional action or further recommendations from the commission is required at this time. However, we'll open up for discussion. Any commissioners have any comments or discussion? Commissioner Pletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, as a start, do I think what we passed last year was a good start and a good change? Yes. Do I think it's where we need to be as a whole program? No, but I think it's something we need to certainly build on over the next couple of years. I think as a whole, the program is missing a little bit of subjectivity based on public comment, especially when I have to, and I note that all the public comments are in the record, but when we have 33 public comments on Wethersfield, and, when you look and you see that the pedestrian counts meet the standards, it's just really a vehicle issue. I think there needs to be somewhat of a subjectivity added into it, because of how clearly impassioned folks from Wethersfield are about this, to have 33 of them write during the summer vacation, write public comments about this item. I think that says a lot. And I also counted Maple, Wildwood, Ladera Star, Sycamore Canyon, Lang Ranch and Banyan as contributing to the public comments this evening. I want to, first thank everyone for that. Even our chair of our district advisory council, Leanne Holland, wrote in, and her points are certainly well taken and well raised. And I thank her for the collaboration that she was able to do with staff over the last year and allowing you guys to come and speak and introduce this program to DAC. And with that being said, I would invite staff to continue to engage with the District Advisory Council. I think as a body, if we really want to collectively agree based on what's in our resolution that we're going to work together on this issue, the DAC and the parents involved and the site representatives involved are the perfect start to fixing, building upon what we've laid over the, building upon your hard work, staff's hard work, and the foundation that we've laid over the last year. I have to go for another means, but I'm at every single meeting, and I can tell you these parents are more involved and care more passionately about everything that happens at particular school sites, probably in the entire city. I mean, these are the parents you want on your side if we're going to collectively work together to build on this program. I think based on kind of some of the public comments tonight, I think we have a communication issue to deal with as we cross into the new year and in terms of the new school year, of collaborating maybe with the district to send out a collective email or message to all the parents in the district that, your crossing guards are not being taken away this year. Like, just to make it very clear, because I think there is, and I believe it was the chair or Commissioner Immel that mentioned that there's a little bit of a miscommunication that has been going on here tonight. And then I think at the same time, that communication I'd recommend is saying how close some of these school sites were. I mean, there are a number that meet 3 out of 4 standards. But for, you look at Wildwood and it's 3 people on a PM count, and they would have triggered, what we needed to trigger. So I think they're practical changes, but it's a communication aspect of just getting this information in front of parents. Along with, that messaging of, I believe you mentioned it too, Nader, in your presentation of we've had our highest kind of staffing over the last year, and we've done really committed to the staffing. I think that's a huge positivity. That's a huge bonus point. I mean, I recall based on our past comments when we were dealing with the new resolution was we talked a lot about confidence, and we heard it even tonight from some of the parents of, I'm just not confident in the letting my kid walk to school or even walking with my kid to school if I know that crossing guard isn't going to be there. I think it was Nadia actually in one of our last public comments for Wildwood that actually mentioned that of, I'm going to send a child to Wildwood. I'd love to walk there. I'm just not going to do it if, there's some confidence in the program. Overall, I mean, I think we're on the right start to build positivity back. My biggest comments and my biggest recommendations are obviously substantive changes, which are not on the topic tonight, but we really need to build off it from a communication standpoint, really work to collaborate and consider me an asset. I'm happy to help facilitate anything that needs to be done to help build on communication. I don't want to speak for Leanne Holland, the chair of the DAC committee, but she's always been open to having city staff come by and give updates. I can't imagine that's going to change. But I think based on these numbers and what we're seeing, it's like so many of these sites remain on the bubble for one reason or another, that a little bit more communication, a little bit more confidence in the program, and a little bit more positivity kind of generating it out there on a continuing basis. And I think we'll see some of these counts continue to tick in the right direction. Because, I mean, in the end, looking at council's environmental goals, looking at council's kind of commitment to where they, their long-term planning is, even the general plan update, it's we want to increase walkability and alternative forms of getting from point A to point B. And this program's an essential part of it, especially as new families come from LA and all over to the community and put their kids in our great schools. This is that path forward. So partial thank you, and you know, continue to work, continue to collaborate with the school district. You know, you have assets, I think, here on the commission. You have assets, you know, in the community. And, you know, let's collaborate and build on it and see some better numbers next year. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anyone else?
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Commissioner Pletcher. I think I couldn't have said it better myself. All of the points that I was hoping to make, he eloquently said them. I think that I'll just add to the just emphasizing, you know, the collaborative effort. Very much looking forward to see how we can collaborate together to really push to ensure that all of our families know how essential our crossing guards are, and that, you know, we want to encourage more walkability, like Pletcher said, across the board. And so just looking forward to furthering that mission. You know, while reading all of the letters, it really, I wanted to just thank everybody for submitting those letters and coming together, because it was very impactful, especially, you know, repeatedly reading directly from some of the letters. Please prioritize the safety and well-being of our children by maintaining funding and support for this critical service. And it really is such a critical service. I mean, it touches on a lot of different values that we're looking to build within the city. And so, like I said, just very much looking forward to this next year and seeing what we can do to build from that.
Yeah, thank you. Our fellow commissioners have made some excellent points, and Mr. Hidari, thank you for your report, your presentation. I did want to mention, you know, budget constraints was mentioned by one of the speakers, and I'll tell you, when I was reviewing we received the email before the meeting, and I was looking at the data, and when I saw all of the red, I was very disappointed. You know, I think all of us, you know, we would love to see all of them meeting the criteria, and so I don't look at this as something where we're trying to make decisions for budget cuts, right? We're in a position where, as a city, we've had to take a stance on establishing some sort of criteria, right, for our crossing guards, and we've taken a stance of trying to go more lenient, which I'm in favor of. And you know, I think the question is are we lenient enough, right? But I think a lot of my fellow commissioners have said it, but I would echo it. Let's use this, right, for this coming school year, this coming spring, to double down our efforts to get our kids walking, and to get the communication out there around that.
All right, thank you, Chair. Well, in listening to the comments tonight, I think the public speakers really captured the essence of what we were grappling with in 2022 when we were trying to formulate this policy. The competing considerations between child safety, which you really can't put enough emphasis on that, and at the same time trying to come up with some objective standards to eliminate any biasness or you know, influence on where the crossing guards would go and where they would not go. Yeah, it was complicated. You know, there were issues as you know, as we're just alluded to, about budgetary issues. Who was going to pay for the crossing guards? Was it the school district? Was it the city? And then there was us trying to sit here and formulate this policy. And I agree with Commissioner Pletcher that, you know, objective criteria are not necessarily well suited for every situation. And I'm speaking as the parent of a child who goes to one of the schools on this list that is in the red. And I know the crossing guard by name, and very good guy, there every day, does his job, controls the traffic across a very large street, and I have to accept the policy that was put into place, and accept the fact that we did the best that we could with the circumstances that are before us. But there was discussion when we were having our formulatory conversations about what this policy would look like, taking into consideration the steepness of a roadway, twists and turns in the road which may impact visibility. And I'm hopeful for a couple of things. Number one, that the policy can adopt to accommodate that, and maybe it's a catch-all provision in the policy that allows the city council and its absolute discretion to determine that a location is eligible for a crossing guard, despite the fact that it may not meet all of these other criteria or some of the criteria, but given other circumstances, decide that this is that there's a peril, that there's a safety hazard, and that a crossing guard is going to mitigate that peril. And I'm hopeful that the reason why we're having this meeting is to get this information to the public, that there is going to be possibly the loss of a crossing guard at a given location. And I mean, rather than get an email, because I'm the parent of a child at one of these schools, and I got an email blast like 2 days ago that said, alert, alert, emergency, emergency. The traffic commission is meeting, on, Wednesday night. And I'm looking at this email and I'm thinking, why are you sending this email out 2 nights before the traffic commission meeting? I mean, isn't the time to really be talking about the importance of your crossing guard at the beginning of the school year, throughout the school year, encouraging people to walk to school? And I know from my child's school, the principal does a good job in sending out emails to the parents about safe driving around the campus. But again, this is part of the public outreach and getting the message out to parents that if you want a crossing guard, some of it is within your control. And if you want your child to walk to school, then have your child do that. And on some, day that we don't know what day it's going to be, but there will be counters out there counting the kids that are crossing the intersection. So I'm hopeful that this information is going to serve a positive purpose, and that the right people are going to get this information, and that they're going to do something productive with it. And hopefully, by the time the next counts are taken, this list is going to shrink dramatically. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're pretty consistent in our messaging here. I just wanted to add a few things. One, I know it's been said multiple times that the threshold is far more generous, I believe the word was, than what is in the MUTC. And I'll say to that, we live in Thousand Oaks, and we have high expectations, and people move to this city because of those high expectations. So, we don't have to add the flashing crosswalks, and we don't have to add bike lanes. We don't have to do any of that stuff. But we do, and we live in a great community. And I'll say that, the generosity is appreciated, and I think it's also expected to a certain degree from a lot of our residents and citizens that live here. I agree about, this is positive. I think one of the great things about this, the resolution and how the city council structured it, giving the 2 years, is that it gives the positivity to this meeting is, you know what, we're sharing this information and now it's time to communicate it out. And I know, Mr. Hadari, you did communicate this data and information out to the school district. It's not a secret. I work for the school district. I know. My kid also attends one of the schools that has 2 crossing guards here in the red. And so the positivity to me comes in, now we're aware, and the schools will continue to push out the message to parents. And it's not, the message isn't save a crossing guard per se. We understand it's a safety piece, but there's also some other added benefits. And I can say that, and I've personally seen this at my kids' schools, it does lessen the amount of cars on the road when people walk. So there's less traffic. It makes the in and out far greater and easier at school campuses. And, something that, there's 2 things that I didn't hear a lot of people talk about it, but the walking to school aspect with your child. I walk down, I live about 3 blocks from my kid's school, and I'll pick them up and I have a great conversation with them for those 3 blocks. And I think what you build in that relationship of just, you know what, I'm not driving, even if it's 3, 4, 5 blocks, whatever, it's just a longer, deeper conversation. How did school go? What's going on? And you just have some private, alone conversation with your kids. And I think that's really something to continue to message out by the schools to parents, aside from the safety issues. And also friendships, having kids walk, 2 or 3 blocks if they're neighbors. And I've done that. We picked up our neighbors' kids, and, they'll talk and we'll jump in on a conversation, I think. So those are very important aspects of the walk to school piece, and where crossing guards come in. And losing crossing guards, I fear, you lose that, and you lose that ability. So I will say that the school district will continue to message out to parents about this. I think this is good that it's coming now, gives us the opportunity at the beginning of the next school year to communicate out and continue to promote the positive benefits, aside from the natural benefits of safety of walking to school. So the last piece, and I think one of the, Miss Muscarella, Samantha had mentioned it, and because that's where my kid goes to school too. And I think this applies to a number of the locations that are here as a result of the counts, is the uncontrolled intersections, or the ones that have a 1-way or 2-way stop sign but have three streets, or it's a 4-way intersection. If it ever comes to a point where a crossing guard does go away, or the location doesn't qualify, and if there ends up to be some change next year for the following year, I would say that has to be visited. Because I know what she's talking about specifically. I'll mention, so on Whitechapel and Knightsbridge, so there's 2 stop signs, and there's a hill coming down, but there's no stop sign at the hill. And if a crossing guard goes away, I think the expectation of a kid to try and cross that street would be far more challenging. So that presents a whole nother issue. So I just hope that there is some follow-up if there ever comes a time where a stop doesn't qualify, that we do look at what kind of traffic controls there are there. And I'm not for putting a stop sign on every single corner. We've had those conversations quite a bit in the past. But I do think that has to be a consideration, whether it be a larger crosswalk marked, or just school crossing marked in the roadway, or placement of a stop sign here or there. I think those are critical to some follow-ups and post actions that I'm not sure that are included in the process here. So I would like to see that if it does come next year. The last thing I would say is, so we're meeting here. It's June. School is out. I think the timing of the meeting is pretty important for feedback. I would say next year, what I would request or ask is that this meeting be done in April or May. Only because schools are still in session, and the communication piece now, we got a lot of people, I'm sure schools are out, are on vacation, away, or doing whatever it is. And I think having the meeting earlier in the spring, given the timing of the counts or whatever, if it's feasible, I think would be more beneficial for the community for input in public. Okay, anyone? Commissioner Pletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I second that last point in terms of the meeting date. For instance, knowing that this was on the agenda, the last District Advisory Council meeting is in May. So we had no opportunity to really reach out to, I think, a key group of parents to just disseminate that information very, very quickly. I think that's a perfect example of, one of the reasons why just to push it up a month or two earlier is I think, a great idea. And I realize that throws maybe a little wrench into the counts, but certainly feasible. If it can be done, I think it's beneficial for that communication building. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, anyone else? Okay. So again, no vote is required. We're just receiving the report. We have received the report. No further discussion. We'll move on to item number 7, just status report of prior Traffic Commission recommendations. There are none, correct? Number 8, Commission referrals. There are none. Move on to number 9, work program and commission schedule. Any questions for staff? Seeing no questions. Agenda item 10, Traffic Commission comments, discussions. Any general comments or discussion from the commissioners? Commissioner Pletcher?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just very briefly, I wanted to make sure staff received, I got a Facebook message that I forwarded over to you, I believe, just regarding a stop sign issue from a constituent. I just want to make sure that that was received and just verify that we can get communication back.
Yes, we received it, and we'll reach out to the resident as far as options in terms of, I believe, traffic control on one of the intersections on Wendy Drive.
Yes, that's the one I'm referring to. Perfect. Thank you. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Anyone else? Okay, number 11, future meetings. Consideration and possible cancellation of the regular Traffic Commission meeting scheduled for July 24, 2024. The commission's dark in the month of August, so our next regular scheduled meeting would be September 25, 2024. City staff has indicated there's nothing pressing on the agenda item, and it is in the middle of the summer session. So I'll entertain a motion to cancel the July 24, 2024 meeting.
I'd like to make a motion to cancel the July 2024 meeting.
Okay. Any discussion? We take the roll.
Okay, Chair Hayek,
Yes.
Vice Chair Callahan,
Yes.
Commissioner Amell,
Yes.
Commissioner Orozco,
Yes.
and Commissioner Pletcher.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 5-0.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. And we are now at the end of our agenda, and our meeting is adjourned. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your summer.